sets the agenda for your conversation with the people that you're going to meet throughout the week. Now, on Monday is when the agenda is set. However, in the middle of the week, so Wednesday, Thursday, in Uganda, usually there's another big story that hits, and before we know it, the agenda has been changed, the talk has been changed, and now we jump to another trend. And we go, there's a friend who told me that in Uganda, people forget easily and people move on easily. So if there's a conversation today about nudes by, say, one of the biggest musicians in our country, Juliana, because she has never done nudes or even sung in skimpies. Let's say Juliana has nudes. And then the news goes out, Juliana news, and then in a few weeks, something else happens. Say Ugandans were abducted. Before you know it, the news is now on Ugandans being abducted, and that becomes the news. Now, in a few weeks, something happens, Armored Cow, Bobi Wine, before we know it, the conversation jumps. So Ugandans, they go with what is happening, follow the trend, tugenda nebigenda. And some people think, oh, that's really bad because you let issues go very fast. You forget things easily. But here's the thing, a nation that does not forget is a nation that does not forgive. And a nation that does not forgive is a nation that does not develop. So Ugandans have learned that, and they say, Domanyichi, instead of staying and grieving over a number of things, we shall protest, we shall talk about it. Occasionally, we shall still put a hashtag on social media, and hopefully something will happen, but we need to keep working for the meal, for that ticket that brings the food on our table, be it one day, be it 2 days, but we've got to hustle, if not for us, then for our kids. I mean, what do you think the grind and hustle is for? What do you think getting out of bed at 4 a.m. in the morning is for? What do you think going home at 10:30 in the night is for? No, sir, it's not for you. It's for the future generation. It's for your children. It's for your grandchildren. Get out of your bed right now. Go work and make sure you have a secured future for them. Good morning. Angie will be joining us later, of course, out of this serious talk of get out of bed, go and work, grind. Angie will take us out of that, and she'll be taking us through a relaxed session of course, the inspirational book of the day, the inspiration person of the day, and all those details that you ought to know as a human being, aside from politics in your country, because you cannot fill your brain with only politics. There's a lot going on in the country, so why only politics is the question that you should be asking yourself. So we take you away from politics, take you into something else for you people who love interior decor. We have you covered. And then later on, Tariq comes in, of course, with business, whereby we talk about a number of products that are on the market. And if you want to be part of that particular show of Tariq to show off your products and services, come to STV and we shall do that for you. Now let's start straightforward with the stories that made the headlines. And for everybody, I mean, even if you're not into politics, you know that His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni addressed the nation yesterday at 8 p.m. and he said a number of things regarding economics, regarding politics, regarding security, regarding the COVID-19 crisis in the country. And then Robert Kyagulanyi, second in step, also had his own address. And during his address, of course, he talked about the abductions and the torture and the human rights violations to Ugandans and on Ugandans. And over the weekend, he also met the Chambogo University students who he spoke to. Now, Robert Kyagulanyi's address was meant to happen on Friday. However, he postponed it because he said there was unstable electricity and there was also unstable internet. And you know that most of Robert Kyagulanyi's address, if not all, is put on social media and not on live TV. So Don Wanyama came up and said Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is speaking at 8 p.m. on Sunday. And unfortunately, Robert Kyagulanyi had also set the exact same date for his address to Ugandans. I don't know whether it was pre-planned or maybe he just came up with his own date. Who knows? Now, Robert Kyagulanyi's address came a few hours, a few minutes, 30 or so to say, before Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's address. Robert Chagulanyi is popular on social media. Robert and Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is popular on TV. And they spoke about different issues, of course. And we'll be analyzing those issues according to how it went down. Now, Robert Chagulanyi is still insisting that there are a number of Ugandans who have gone missing and are still missing, and the list that Jeje Odong gave last week is not true, because Jeje Odong gave a total of 177 people, 177 people. And Bobi Wine says there are over 400. However, the list that they removed had 235 to 238 to 258, depending on different lists of people that are missing. Parents are still complaining and saying their children are missing. If we backtrack a little bit to the conversation about people who were abducted by drones, we remember that police had said two things. One, they had denied that police had anything to do with that. They had come up on media, Ochola and Jeje Odong, and they had made it very clear that police had nothing to do with the abductions, and the drone that people see might not be for security operatives. And we're like, okay, let's see how this conversation goes. And if you do not know where Ugandans are, those that were abducted, what information are we as the public supposed to have? What are we supposed to tell the children of the people who were abducted? Now, later on, they said they had arrested 10 people in line with the abductions of these Ugandans, 10 people. And then later, Ugandans who see and tell said they saw the drone, the numberless drone, parked at the police station, the same drone that was alleged to have abducted people. During the same week, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni addressed the nation. And then he burst the bubble. And he said, you know what? Actually, we are the ones that abducted Ugandans. Our security personnel are the ones that abducted Ugandans. And those Ugandans that were abducted are not innocent. They're not victims, but they're criminals. And he said that it will never happen in the NRM government, unlike the Amin Dada regimes, the Obote regimes, where people disappear without trace and without explanations. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni had said that it would never happen in Uganda, and when someone disappears, the NRM government will know the whereabouts of these people. And he said that the security organization and the internal affairs should have a report written with the names of the people who are missing. In that same week, 17 people in Mukono were released and left to go back to their families. We'll come to that. Let's come back to Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's address. Now, after he had said that time that 17 people that were missing were returned back to their families in Mukono, there were also a number of them who still stayed missing. And according to Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, they were being tagged as terrorists because they were found with ammunition. Some of them were found with military wear. Some of them caused the chaos on the 18th. Some of them were planning for post-election chaos. Now, those are the people that were rounded up. However, the public is demanding that you either take them to prison where we can visit them, or you tell us where they are and you give us their names and we know these are the names of the people who are arrested. The conversation is long when it comes to the arrest of Ugandans. Bingi nyo were talked about. The people who were arrested, the drone not belonging to police, the fact that it's numberless because when it was being imported in the country, the numbers were so small that it fell down. All that conversation happened in Uganda. Ugandans nebagamba, we are still demanding for the whereabouts of our people. And even during the summit, the iPod summit that happened, the same thing was addressed. And yesterday, Robert Chagulanyi addressed the same issue. Now, coming back to the address of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, while he was addressing the nation, said NUP as a party was the one that instead rigged the elections, and it wasn't NRM. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni said they massively tried to cheat. They massively cheated in the elections. Look what is happening, a change in the conversation. He said they massively cheated. However, even with their cheating, NRM lost, and that only shows how popular the NRM party is. He spoke about people who were trying to disorganize the security and peace of Uganda, and the fact that he would not allow that to happen. Robert Chagulanyi brought an affidavit, if you remember, last week, and the affidavit showed that he won by 58% versus NRM's 34%, as was talked about by Byabakama, who said that particular affidavit, that NUP is masquerading, is not true, and it's a lie. Now, that conversation is ping-ponging from one side to another, and it's a very interesting conversation for you who is interested in politics to follow, because you ought to know what exactly is happening to your country, who is saying what and who is saying what when. Now, let's have a recap of the president's speech. To Komeo, to get what exactly the president said about the vaccine that we were expecting our scientists in Uganda to create. Until now, we still don't have the vaccine. He tried to explain that. And then the biggest headline is that Museveni explained the reason why he and Janet Kataha Museveni did not receive the vaccines. Stay with us.
Extracting oil from the carbide, or preparing to extract oil by building the pipeline and also building the refinery. However, even in the meantime, even before all that has happened, as you have seen, we have got a lot of production. I mentioned this during the campaigns. While Uganda in 1986 was a land of shortages, it is now a land of surpluses. Surplus sugar, surplus maize, surplus milk, surplus bananas, surplus cement, surplus industrial products, mtaimbwa, everything is surplus. Unlike 1986 when it was shortage. Ebola rufuse ekyengera. Amafa gahindukira omweru. Where there was shortage, there is now plenty. Now, this brings in the issue of trade, of market. Where do you sell what you produce? In kingdoms, Prussia, Bavaria, Saxony, and at that time they couldn't trade. But when they became a united Germany, goods could go from one end to another end. Now, some of the people were saying that the idea of federation would not solve the present problems. I'm not saying that the federation will solve the present problem of maize, but I'm saying that this problem of maize would not arise if we had gone for the federation. So therefore, I would invite especially the young people, because when we were supporting these efforts, we were young. We rejected tribalism when we were young, and we supported patriotism and Pan-Africanism. So therefore, yes, we are going to, the idea of retaliation is not a good idea, because it plays in the hands of those who want us to break up. In 1986, Kenya was exporting to Uganda $200 million worth of goods in a year. Uganda was selling to Kenya only $12 million. At that time, people were telling me to close the border because Kenya was cheating us. I said, no, I will not close the border. I would not interfere with the trade. Instead, I would build Uganda. Now, Uganda is exporting as much to Kenya as Kenya is exporting to Uganda, and we're not infected. I think that was because where we live is quite spacious. The houses are big houses. So even if these children would come in with their corona, the space was not squeezed. Being squeezed is part of, being confined is part of, I think, the reason for infecting one another. When there's space, it seems the virus doesn't go far. So we have not yet been vaccinated. But I'm also making my people look at all these vaccines. The one of Oxford, the one of the Chinese, the one of the Russians. We are also developing ours. We're developing our vaccine. We delayed a bit because, first of all, we had to struggle with our own slaves here who don't believe that we should be self-sufficient. They believe in buying Oksaka, Basaka, Mulumogo of Oksaka. Those people wasted a bit of our time in importing equipment. Then even the outsiders were saying, you Africans, why do you want to make vaccines? You wait, and we said you. But we said no, we are going to make it. And my people are now moving. Our children are moving. They are very well educated, well trained. You would hear their story. They're on the right track. So we shall make our own vaccine. And our vaccine will be better than some of these vaccines because our children are working on the new virus, because this virus has been mutating. It can damage the lungs, those internal organs. They say it even affects the brain. So, experimenting on somebody who's already damaged, you will not be sure. Alhaji Chiveji Chirunda, people like Bishop Kagwa in Masaka, the people like the late Alfred Mubanda or God, others helped the security forces to dismantle the criminal plans. Now, the opposition have been again planning that they will stop the swearing of the president. They won't. They won't, because anybody who is planning that is criminal. The security forces will go for him or her. Then they plan all sorts of crazy things, including killing the opposition people themselves, so that they say it is the government which has killed the people of the opposition. These are the schemes they go on hatching. Even to conspire to do that is a crime. If we get evidence on that, we shall go for you. I advise these people, but I'm very glad that many of the former NUP people have refused. Yes, they were supporting NUP. There are some grievances against NRM because of the corrupt NRM fellows. Because NRM also had been infiltrated by parasites who don't do anything, just taking money from the system. So some of the young people were disgruntled and they had joined the NUP. But NUP turned out to be hijacked by people who work for parasitic interests. But I'm very glad that many of the youth are refusing to follow the criminal plans of their leaders and their foreign masters. There are so many cases. Actually, they started even before the election. Because I remember, for instance, the coordinator for Bunyoro, Akugizibwe, refused to do what he was being told by Chaguranyi. Defy corona riot, they refused. Akugizibwe, the one who was coordinating Bunyoro. Angaria, the one who was coordinating Bunyoro, refused. For NUP, these were all NUP children. The ones in Mbare, Buire, and the girls there, and many others. The ones in Busoga, the ones in the north, massively, they refused to go on with the schemes of this opposition. So those who are still being used, please stop, because we are not going to allow you. You saw the massive deployment we did on election day. You had been told that you would stop the election, but you couldn't. You couldn't. You can't disrupt Uganda. Whoever is deceiving you is deceiving you. So that is on the issue of war. Then part of the problem is caused by the media. There is an evil paper called Monitor. The other day, Monitor published
his address on a number of issues. What issue got your attention? Was it the economics? Was it health? Or was it security? Of course, on the security side, Museveni was talking about a number of youths trying to disrupt the security of this nation, and he said it will not happen. So which part got your attention, and why did it get your attention? Here's which part got my attention. Aside, of course, from the East African Federation, where we were all waiting to see what Museveni would say about the maize that Kenya returned. Now, Kenya explained that we had chemicals, cancer-causing chemicals, in our maize, and that is why it was returned. However, the argument is that that maize could, however, not have been Ugandan maize. Because here's the thing. We know that there's stamps that show, okay, there's a stamp that this is Ugandan, there's a stamp that this is Tanzanian, there's a stamp. However, we Ugandans do not brand our gutias when we are sending them out. The sacks are not branded. So how do we know for sure that those particular sacks were in Uganda? However, the maize was returned, and social media, of course, went awash with that conversation. And everybody was saying, we are not going to ban that maize, we're going to eat our maize. We don't waste food in Uganda. We were taught by our forefathers not to waste food. However, you hear what His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the president of this nation, said. He said he will not let trivial matters mess up the East African Federation. He said he's not going to allow it to happen because even during COVID-19, they were asking him to close the border between Uganda and Kenya, and he refused. And look at where we are now. We're exporting a lot of products in Kenya, just like Kenya is exporting in Uganda. However, we also know, out of the discussion that we had last week, that Kenya imports more to Uganda than we do export to Kenya. However, hopefully in the future, we'll have a balance of trade whereby we export almost the same amount that Kenya imports in our country, because at this moment, as we speak, they seem to earn more than we earn from them. Now, that is the conversation on the East African Federation, a conversation on its own, an economic conversation, a conversation that you need to sit down in groups and think out loud, because we did that with you. We created a think tank on Select TV, that is the first show, and we asked you, what do you think should be done when it comes to Kenya's maize or Kenya's produce in Uganda after they banned our maize? However, the ban was lifted, and Kenya gave a number of rules to Uganda, saying that these are the rules that you're supposed to follow if you're ever going to bring back maize in Kenya. First of all, stop drying maize on the tarmac, because that is where the chemicals come in from. And then you need certificates of exportation to Kenya or any other country if you're dealing in maize. Now, these maize farmers had said their maize had gone up to 400 shillings, had gone down up to 400 shillings a kilo of maize, which for them was a very, very, very big loss. And you know, in your economics class, what surplus means: when there's a lot of goods, then the demand for those goods are less than the surplus. That means the price of the goods will definitely drop. And Museveni said, because we don't want that, that's why the East African Federation is important. What do you think about that? Now, that's economics. We've discussed the security matters in the country and why the president feels like the only insecurity that we have at this moment is the NUP camp and its people, including Eddie Mutwe and Nubian Lee, who are still in Machindi military barracks or military prison or military court trying to get bail, which they have been denied. Now they're saying they'll take it to the High Court. However, remember, the same High Court that they're taking it to is the High Court that Robert Chagulanyi withdrew his petition and said the judges are not being fair. So do they think that the judges will be fair this time in trying to grant them bail? More of that conversation, of course, will be coming in our subsequent programs that will be running through the day. Now,